The dawn of the 20th century arrived on a wave of unprecedented progress. In the bustling metropolises of London, Paris, and Berlin, the air hummed with the energy of a new era. This was a time of rapid industrial growth, where towering smokestacks reached for the sky. Symbols of a world being forged in steel and fire, modern cities illuminated by the glow of electric lights teemed with life, their streets a vibrant tapestry of horse-drawn carriages, newly minted automobiles, and citizens filled with the promise of the future. The clatter of machinery in sprawling factories was the relentless heartbeat of an age defined by its seemingly limitless potential. Across the great nations of Europe and beyond, a sense of boundless optimism prevailed. Economies surged forward, driven by scientific innovation that was reshaping every facet of human existence. The telegraph and telephone had shrunk the globe, allowing messages to cross continents in mere moments. Medical breakthroughs were extending lifespans, and new theories in physics were challenging humanity's very understanding of the universe. Empires expanded their reach, their flags flying over vast territories in Africa and Asia, bringing immense wealth and resources back to the imperial heartlands. This was an age of cultural confidence, where art, literature, and philosophy flourished, reflecting a civilization that believed it stood at the pinnacle of history, its continued ascent all but assured. On the surface, daily life for many carried on with a reassuring rhythm of normalcy. In the city streets were a constant flow of activity, from vendors hawking their wares to elegantly dressed couples strolling through meticulously manicured parks. In the countryside, the seasons turned as they always had, governing the cycles of planting and harvest. The newspapers were filled with stories of technological marvels, royal weddings, and sporting events. For the average person, the world appeared stable, predictable, and secure. The intricate political machinations of distant capitals felt remote, a quiet background noise to the immediate concerns of family, work, and community. The peace had lasted for decades, and few could imagine a future where this prosperous tranquility would be so utterly and violently shattered. Yet, beneath this gilded surface of progress and peace, a complex and dangerous web of political tensions was quietly being woven. In the grand halls of power and the hushed corridors of diplomacy, a different reality was taking shape. The great powers of Europe, Britain, France, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia vied for dominance, their ambitions and fears colliding in a delicate, yet increasingly fragile, balance. Quiet resentments simmered, born from past conflicts and unresolved disputes. Diplomatic language, while outwardly cordial, often masked deep-seated distrust. Each nation watched the others with a wary eye, calculating their strengths and weaknesses, forever guarding against any perceived threat to their own standing on the world stage. A powerful and volatile force began to animate these rivalries. Nationalism. This intense, often aggressive, form of national pride became a defining ideology of the era. It fostered a fervent belief in the superiority of one's own country and culture, while simultaneously breeding suspicion and contempt for others. In Germany, a newly unified and ambitious nation, nationalism fueled a desire for its place in the sun. In France, it was tinged with a bitter longing to reclaim the lost provinces of Alsace and Lorraine. In the multi-ethnic empires of Austria-Hungary and the Ottomans, the same force inspired suppressed peoples Serbs, Poles, Czechs, and Arabs to dream of independence, creating internal fault lines that threatened to tear these aging empires apart. This rising tide of nationalism and distrust drove the nations of Europe to seek security in strength and numbers. A rigid system of military alliances began to cleave the continent into two heavily armed and opposing sides. On one side stood the Triple Alliance, a pact binding Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy in a promise of mutual defense. In response, the Triple Entente was formed, a looser but no less significant understanding between France, Russia, and Great Britain. These alliances were intended to be defensive, to deter aggression by creating a stalemate. Instead, they created a geopolitical tripwire. An attack on one nation could now automatically draw its allies into the fray, transforming a regional dispute into a continent-wide inferno. Europe had become a powder keg, with the treaties acting as interconnected fuses. As the alliances solidified, a frantic and ruinous arms race began to escalate tensions to an unbearable pitch. Fear and competition fed a cycle of military expansion. Germany, seeking to challenge Britain's long-held naval supremacy, embarked on a massive shipbuilding program. Britain, determined to maintain its dominance of the seas, responded in kind, launching ever larger and more powerful on land. Armies swelled to unprecedented sizes. Conscription became the norm, and military staffs drafted intricate, unyielding war plans, such as Germany's Schlieffen Plan, which mapped out precise timetables for invasion. The air grew thick with the rhetoric of militarism, a philosophy that glorified military power and presented war not as a last resort, but as a noble and necessary instrument of national policy. The relentless accumulation of weapons made conflict seem not only possible, but inevitable. The theater of tension was not confined to Europe alone. The same rivalries playing out on the continent were mirrored across the globe, as the great powers clashed over their colonial ambitions. In Africa and Asia, European nations scrambled to claim territory, exploit resources, and establish strategic footholds. These colonial competitions created frequent diplomatic crises from Morocco to the Balkans, pushing the major powers to the brink of war on several occasions. The pursuit of empire stretched their military resources thin and exported their conflicts to distant lands, creating a global network of friction points. The world was now interconnected in a web of imperial rivalry, ensuring that any major conflict would not be a localized European affair, but a truly global one. In this atmosphere of suffocating tension, it was understood by the architects of power that even a minor incident could have catastrophic consequences. A single, errant spark, falling in just the right place, possessed the potential to ignite a conflagration so vast and so devastating that it would consume the entire continent and beyond. The intricate system of alliances, the inflexible military plans, and the seething nationalistic hatreds had created a machine primed for war. It was a machine that, once set in motion, might prove impossible to stop. Every diplomatic crisis, every border skirmish, carried with it the terrifying possibility of being that final, fatal spark. And so, in the summer of 1914, the world stood unknowingly on the precipice of a chasm. The citizens of this confident, modern age went about their lives, oblivious to the fact that the foundations of their world were about to crumble. They could not see the storm gathering on the horizon, a storm that would unleash a scale of death and destruction previously unimaginable. They were standing on the edge of the abyss, on the very brink of the Great War, the conflict that would forever shatter their illusions of peace and progress and plunge the world into its first, truly global war.